You need to stop asking questions about the trust, Lauren. Your brother and I have it under control, and your paranoia is only making things worse for everyone. I saw those screenshots you sent. Delete them. They don't prove anything. And if you keep pushing this, you'll regret it more than you know. The community here doesn't tolerate people who stir up drama. Your mother and I built our life in this place, and you're not going to tear it down with your accusations.
Sign the authorization I emailed you. It's for the family's sake. Don't make me have to explain to everyone why my own daughter won't support us. Hi, my name is Lauren Bennett. I am 28 years old.
That phone call from my father hit like ice water in the face on an already humid Florida morning. I was standing in the small kitchen of my townhouse, inside the gated coastal retreat where my family had lived for the last 8 years, staring at the half-finished cup of coffee I'd been trying to drink before my shift at the Marine Research Center. The call had come through while I was checking emails, and I'd answered without thinking, still half asleep. Now the words kept looping in my head, sharp and ugly.
I set the phone down on the counter and opened the family group chat on my tablet. The messages were gone. Every single one my father and brother had exchanged 2 nights earlier about moving money out of the Coastal Properties Trust had vanished. But I still had the screenshots. I'd taken them the moment I saw the notifications pop up on the shared family tablet I sometimes used for work notes. Lines about covering the shortfall before the next community assessment, and Lauren doesn't need to know the numbers. Lines about using my name on a new line of credit because she's the responsible one on paper.
My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From that cold, familiar burn of realizing the people who were supposed to have your back had been quietly picking your pockets while smiling at neighborhood barbecues.
I walked out onto the tiny balcony that overlooked the man-made lagoon the community used for kayaking tours. The water was flat and glassy under the morning sun. 2 houses down, Catherine Wells was already out on her patio doing her morning yoga, waving at anyone who walked by like she was the unofficial mayor of the whole gated world. She'd been the one who introduced my parents to the community board when we first moved here. She'd also been the one who kept telling me how lucky I was to have a father who understood investments, while I was still figuring out how to pay off my student loans.
I didn't wave back. The trust had been set up by my grandparents years ago, a modest but solid fund tied to 2 rental properties inside the retreat and a small portfolio meant to help all 3 of us kids eventually. My father was the trustee. My brother Michael had always been the golden one who could do no wrong in his eyes. I was the one who asked too many questions and kept my own savings separate. That separation had apparently become a problem.
2 weeks earlier, my father had started pressing me to contribute some of my own savings into a family renovation project on one of the rentals. He said it would increase the trust's value and that everyone would benefit. When I asked to see the current statements, he brushed me off. When I pushed, the deleted messages started appearing and disappearing in the group chat.
I pulled up the screenshots again on my phone. The timestamps were clear. My father and Michael talking about pulling $30,000 out to cover Michael's unexpected expenses with his new boat and my father's club dues. Talking about how they could make it look like routine maintenance on the books. Talking about how I was too rigid to understand how things really worked in a place like this.
I saved the images to a locked folder and closed the tablet. My shift started in 40 minutes. I needed to get moving, but my stomach felt like it was full of rocks. This wasn't just about money disappearing. It was about the way my father's voice on the phone had gone from dismissive to threatening in under 60 seconds. It was about the fact that my own brother had been in on it and had said nothing to me.
I grabbed my work bag and headed for the door. As I stepped outside, Catherine Wells called out from her patio.
Lauren, your dad mentioned you might be joining the Community Improvement Committee. That's wonderful. We could really use your organizational skills.
I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. I'll have to check my schedule. She tilted her head, the perfect picture of concerned neighbor.
Everything all right? You look a little pale.
Fine, I said. Just a long night. I got in my car and drove toward the research center, the screenshots burning a hole in my phone. My father wanted me to sign something. He wanted me to stop asking questions. He wanted the social circle that mattered so much to him to stay pristine. What he didn't know was that I had already started saving every scrap of proof I could find. And I had no intention of signing anything that let him keep siphoning what little was left.
I pulled into the parking lot of the Marine Research Center, still hearing my father's voice in my head, the way he had twisted every word into an accusation. The screenshots sat in that locked folder on my phone like live wires. I killed the engine and sat there for a second, forcing my breathing to stay even. No point falling apart in the car before I even clocked in.
Sarah Klein was already at the front desk when I walked in, sorting the morning's sample logs with her usual quiet efficiency. She looked up, pushed her glasses higher on her nose, and gave me the small smile she reserved for people she actually liked. "Rough morning?" she asked, sliding a coffee toward me without being asked. Sarah had been the one person in this whole gated slice of Florida who never treated the Bennett family name like it came with automatic respect.
Something like that. I said, taking the cup. Family stuff.
She didn't push. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. We worked side by side for the next couple of hours, processing water samples from the lagoon system, the hum of the machines making conversation easy to avoid. But my mind kept drifting back to the deleted messages and the authorization form my father wanted signed. I needed to see the actual trust balance for myself. During my break, I slipped into the small office we sometimes used for reports and pulled up the secure portal on my laptop. The login still worked with the credentials my father had given me months ago when he claimed he wanted all of us to stay informed.
The numbers made my stomach drop. What should have been a steady balance sitting in the low six figures was down to almost nothing. Transfers out over the last 18 months lined up exactly with the dates in those screenshots, money moved to cover maintenance that never showed up on any property records, payments to a boat dealership in my brother's name, club initiation fees that matched the gated community's most exclusive roster. My father hadn't just been siphoning, he had drained the thing dry, and then started using the remaining properties as collateral for new lines of credit he never intended to repay.
I took new screenshots, timestamped them, and saved everything to the same locked folder. My hands were steady now. The anger had settled into something colder and sharper. When I came back out to the main lab, Sarah was waiting near the coffee station with her arms crossed.
"Catherine Wells stopped by while you were in there," she said, keeping her voice low. "She asked if everything was okay with your family. Said your father mentioned some misunderstandings about the trust and that you might be confused about a few things."
Of course she had. Catherine had been my father's biggest cheerleader since the day we moved in. She loved the image he projected, the successful trustee keeping the community's property values high while his son helped manage the rentals. I could already picture her spreading the story in the next neighborhood group chat. Poor Richard Bennett, his difficult daughter making trouble again. "Thanks for the heads up," I told Sarah. "If she comes back, tell her I'm busy with actual work."
Sarah studied me for a second.
You know you can tell me if something's actually wrong, right? I've seen the way your father talks to you at those community things. It's not normal. I almost told her right then. The words sat on my tongue. But I wasn't ready to drag anyone else into it yet. Not until I had more than screenshots and a gut feeling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my brother.
"Michael, hey, sis, Dad's stressed. Maybe just sign the form so we can move past this. It's not a big deal. We'll sort the numbers later." I stared at the message. No apology, no explanation. Just another smooth attempt to make me the problem. I typed back 3 words and hit send before I could soften them. "Me, delete this thread." He didn't reply.
By the end of my shift, the pressure had built into something physical. My shoulders ached from holding tension I hadn't noticed until I finally sat down in my car again. I checked the community app on the drive home. Someone, probably Catherine or one of her circle, had posted in the residents' forum asking if anyone had concerns about trust management for the rental properties. The post was vague enough to sound innocent, but the comments underneath were already filling with sympathetic replies about how hard it must be for families when one member doesn't understand how these things work.
They were getting ahead of the story. My father was turning the community against me before I'd even said a word in public.
I parked in my driveway and sat there with the engine off. The townhouse felt smaller than usual. I pulled up the authorization form my father had emailed. It was buried in legal language, but the effect was clear. Signing it would give him and my brother full power to restructure the trust without my signature on future moves. It would also make me personally liable for any new debt they took on in the trust's name. They wanted me to put my own credit and reputation on the line to cover the hole they had already dug.
My phone rang. My father's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail, but he called again immediately. On the third ring, I answered. "I told you to sign it," he said without greeting. His voice was tight, the same tone he used when he wanted everyone in the room to know he was in charge. "I don't have time for your games, Lauren. The board is asking questions. If this gets out the wrong way, it hurts all of us."
Funny, I said keeping my voice flat, because the numbers I just pulled show there's almost nothing left to hurt. You and Michael already took care of that. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, calculating. "You're looking at old data," he said finally. "The transfers were temporary. We're fixing it. But I need that signature today. Your mother is already worried sick about how this looks to the neighbors."
My mother. She had been quiet through all of this, the way she always was when my father decided something. I wondered how much she actually knew. "Tell her not to worry," I said. "I'm not signing anything until I see every transaction from the last 2 years. And if you keep deleting messages in the group chat, I'll assume you have something to hide." I ended the call before he could answer. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it felt like clarity cutting through the noise.
I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the folder with the screenshots one more time. The evidence was there. The trust was empty. My father and my brother had been using it like a personal ATM while expecting me to stay quiet and sign whatever they put in front of me. And now they were using the community I lived in as leverage, letting Catherine and whoever else was listening paint me as the unstable one.
I didn't know yet what I was going to do with the proof, but I knew I wasn't going to sign that form. And I knew that whatever came next, my father had already decided I was the threat that needed to be managed. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my mother. "Mom, can you come over after your shift tomorrow? Just the two of us. Your father won't be home. We need to talk." I stared at the message. My mother rarely asked for anything directly. She usually let my father do the talking. The fact that she was reaching out separately felt like either a trap or the first crack in whatever story they had built. I typed back one word. Me. Okay.
Then I locked the phone and set it face down on the nightstand. Outside, the lagoon was dark. Somewhere in the community, Catherine Wells was probably still on her patio telling anyone who would listen that the Bennett family was going through a rough patch because the daughter couldn't let things go. Let her talk. I had the screenshots. I had the portal numbers. And tomorrow I was going to hear what my mother actually knew.
The question was whether she would tell me the truth or finish where my father had started. The next afternoon, I drove to my mother's house with the screenshots still saved in that locked folder and the knot in my chest pulled tighter than it had been the night before. She had asked for just the two of us. I told myself I was going because I needed to know how deep the lies went. Not because some old part of me still wanted her to choose me over whatever story my father had sold her.
She was waiting on the back patio when I arrived, a glass of iced tea sweating on the table between two empty chairs. Her hands were folded in her lap, like she was trying to keep them from shaking. She didn't stand up when I walked through the gate. "Sit down, Lauren," she said quietly. "Your father thinks I'm at the grocery store. We don't have long." I sat. The tea glass stayed untouched between us.
She looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. I knew some of the money was moving. Not all of it, not the amounts. But I knew Michael had gotten in over his head with that boat. And the new membership, and your father said he was just borrowing against future rental income to cover it. He told me it would be paid back before the next assessment cycle. He said if you found out, you would make it into a bigger problem than it needed to be.
I let the words sit. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the folder, and slid it across the table so she could see the first screenshot. The one where my father and my brother discussed pulling $30,000 and making it look like routine maintenance. My mother's face went still. She read it twice. When she looked up, her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady.
"He told me the messages were just him venting. He said he deleted them because he didn't want you to worry. I believed him because it was easier than asking what else he wasn't telling me." She pushed the phone back toward me. "I should have asked anyway."
The admission landed harder than I expected. Not because she had known, but because she was admitting it out loud instead of defending him the way she always had before. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the community app and the way Catherine Wells had already started seeding the story that I was the one causing trouble. "Catherine's been asking questions," I said. "Dad's letting her. He wants the neighborhood on his side before this blows up."
My mother nodded, like she had already heard the same thing. He's scared. The trust is lower than he told either of us. The properties still have value, but if the board finds out how much has been moved without proper documentation, they could force an audit. He thinks if you sign the authorization, it gives him room to fix the books before anyone looks too closely.
I laughed once, short and bitter. So his plan is to make me legally responsible for the hole he and Michael dug. And you want me to go along with it because it's easier for him.
I didn't say that. Her voice sharpened for the first time. I said he thinks that's the solution.
"I'm telling you because I'm tired of being the person who stays quiet so he can keep pretending everything is fine. But I also know what happens in this community when someone starts asking for real numbers. People like Catherine close ranks. They don't want their property values questioned." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from my father.
"Dad, I know you're there. We're going to talk about this as a family tonight. Do not leave until I get home." My mother saw the message and closed her eyes for a second. He must have checked the security app. He knows when the gate opens. I stood up. "Then I'm leaving now."
"Lauren, wait." She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, not hard but enough to make me stop. "If you walk out right now, he'll spin it as you refusing to listen. He'll tell everyone you're unstable. I've seen him do it before, when people push back. Just take the authorization with you. Don't sign it yet. But don't throw it in his face either. Give me time to talk to him alone."
I looked at her hand on my wrist and felt the old reflex to stay, to not make a scene, to keep the peace my mother had spent years protecting. Then I thought about the portal numbers, the deleted messages, and the way my father had threatened me on the phone about the community turning against me. I pulled my arm free gently. "I'm not signing it, and if he wants to talk tonight, he can do it with the board copied in. I'm done managing his reputation for him."
I walked back through the house and out the front door before she could answer. My car was still parked at the curb. I had just opened the door when another text came through. This one from my brother. "Michael, Mom just called me crying. You really had to do this today? Dad's losing it. Sign the damn form before you ruin everything for all of us."
I didn't reply. I got in the car and drove straight back to my townhouse, the anger sitting low and steady in my chest. When I pulled into my driveway, Catherine Wells was standing on the sidewalk 2 houses down, talking to another neighbor and glancing in my direction. She didn't wave this time.
Inside, I locked the door and opened the community app. The post from earlier had gained traction. Someone had replied with a comment that read like it had been carefully worded by my father. Some families have internal disagreements about money. It's unfortunate when those disagreements become public. We should all support each other through difficult times instead of spreading rumors.
It didn't name me. It didn't have to. The implication was clear. I was the rumor spreader. I was the one making things difficult. I saved a screenshot of that, too.
Then I opened my email and typed a short message to Patricia Lang, the attorney whose name Sarah had given me months ago when another resident had asked about updating a will. I kept it vague but direct. I needed to understand my rights as a beneficiary of a family trust that appeared to have been mismanaged, and I had documentation. I hit send before I could second-guess it.
My phone rang almost immediately. My father again. I let it go to voicemail. He called back twice more in the next 10 minutes. On the third call, I answered. "You went to your mother behind my back," he said. "No hello, just the accusation. That was a mistake. Now we're going to handle this the right way. You will come to the house at 7. We will sit down like adults. And you will sign that authorization so we can put this behind us before the board meeting next week."
I kept my voice even. I'm not coming to the house, and I'm not signing anything until I have a full accounting that a third party has reviewed. There was silence on the other end. Then his voice dropped into something colder.
"You think you're protecting yourself by playing hardball. You're not. You're making enemies out of the only people who actually care what happens to you in this community. Catherine already asked me if you've been under stress at work. People are starting to talk. If you force my hand, I will tell them the truth that my daughter has been making wild accusations because she's jealous of the life her brother and I built here." The line went dead.
I sat on the edge of my couch with the phone still in my hand and felt the last thread of whatever family loyalty I had been holding on to finally snap. He wasn't just asking me to cover for them anymore. He was threatening to destroy my standing in the only place I had lived as an adult. The place where I worked and paid my bills and tried to build something that didn't depend on his approval.
I opened the locked folder one more time and looked at the screenshots. Then I forwarded the entire folder to the email address I had just used for Patricia Lang with a short note. "This is what I have so far. I need advice on next steps before the board meeting next week." The reply came 20 minutes later. "Patricia Lang. I can meet tomorrow morning at 9. Bring everything. And do not sign anything in the meantime."
I set the phone down and stared at the wall. My father had spent years teaching me that blood meant loyalty no matter what. My mother had spent just as long showing me that silence was safer than truth. My brother had chosen their side without hesitation. Tomorrow I was going to find out what the truth actually cost, and whether I was willing to pay it.
The next morning, I sat across from Patricia Lang in her small office 2 miles outside the gated community, the folder of screenshots and portal printouts spread between us like evidence in a trial I hadn't asked for. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who had seen enough family fights over money to know when someone was still hoping for a happy ending that wasn't coming.
She read through everything without interrupting. When she finally looked up, her expression was calm but direct.
"Your father as trustee had a fiduciary duty to manage this trust in the best interest of all beneficiaries," he said. "Moving large sums without documentation, especially to cover personal expenses for himself and your brother, is a clear breach. The fact that he tried to get you to sign away your oversight rights after the fact only makes it worse. You have grounds to demand a full accounting and, if necessary, to petition for his removal as trustee."
I nodded, but the relief I expected didn't come. Knowing I had legal standing didn't change the fact that I still lived inside the same walls as the people who had done this. It didn't change the community app or the way Catherine Wells had already started shaping the story. What happens if I push for the accounting? I asked.
Patricia leaned back. It becomes public record if it goes to court. The board of your community will likely get involved because the trust holds property inside their jurisdiction. Your father will probably fight it. He may try to paint you as difficult or unstable. That's the part most people underestimate until it happens.
I thought about my mother's face on the patio, the way she had admitted knowing pieces of it, but had stayed quiet anyway. I thought about my brother's texts, short and entitled, like I was the one being unreasonable. I don't want to destroy them, I said, and even as I said it, I heard how naive it sounded. I just want them to stop.
Patricia's smile was small and not unkind. Then you need to decide how much you're willing to lose to make that happen. Because once this starts moving, it doesn't stop when you feel like it. She gave me a list of next steps: formal demand letter, possible freeze on further transfers, a meeting with the community board if the properties were at risk. I left her office with the folder back in my bag and a heavier feeling in my chest than when I had walked in.
By the time I got home, the community app had exploded. Someone had posted the vague family disagreement comment again, but this time there were replies. One of them mentioned my name directly for the first time.
Lauren Bennett has always been difficult. Her father has done everything for this community, and now she's making it ugly in public.
It was unsigned, but I knew Catherine's voice when I read it. I didn't reply. I forwarded the thread to Patricia and asked if it changed anything.
Her answer came back fast. It strengthens your position if they're already trying to discredit you publicly. Document everything. That afternoon, my father called 3 times. I didn't answer. My brother texted once. "You're really going to make us do this the hard way?" I deleted it without responding. Then my mother called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me still needed to hear her voice.
He's talking about going to the board himself, she said, her voice low and tired. He says if you won't sign, he'll tell them you've been spreading lies and that the trust issues are because you've been difficult to work with. Catherine is backing him up. She's already told half the neighborhood you're under stress from work and making things up. I closed my eyes. And what are you going to do about it?
There was a long pause. I don't know yet, but I'm not going to keep lying for him. Not out loud. It was the closest thing to a choice she had ever given me. I didn't thank her. I just said, okay, and ended the call.
That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the app. The comments kept coming carefully worded so no one could be accused of outright bullying. But the message was clear: I was the problem. My father was the steady one. My brother was the one who helped with the properties. I was the one stirring trouble because I couldn't let things go.
The next morning, the board called an emergency meeting about the trust properties. Patricia had advised me to attend and bring the documentation. I showed up with the folder in my bag and Sarah Klein sitting beside me for support. She had offered without me asking. "You shouldn't walk into that room alone," she said simply.
The meeting room was the same one used for community socials. Catherine Wells sat in the front row with my father and my brother on either side of her. My mother was in the back, alone, staring at her hands.
My father spoke first. He was calm, reasonable. The picture of a man who had been forced into an uncomfortable position by his own daughter. He talked about misunderstandings, about temporary cash flow issues that had already been resolved, about how some family members had trouble accepting that not every decision needed to be questioned. He never said my name, but everyone in the room knew who he meant.
When he finished, the board chair looked at me. "Lauren, do you have anything you'd like to add?" I stood up. My hands were steady, even though my heart was hammering. I opened the folder and laid the screenshots and portal statements on the table.
"These are transfers from the trust over the last 18 months, I said. They total more than the entire remaining balance. They went to personal expenses, boat payments, club fees, transfers that don't match any property maintenance records. My father, as trustee, moved the money without notifying the other beneficiaries. When I asked questions, he deleted the messages discussing it and tried to get me to sign away my right to review future decisions.
The room went very quiet. Catherine's smile had frozen on her face. My brother shifted in his seat like he wanted to stand up, but couldn't find the words. My father's voice was tight when he finally spoke. "Those documents are private. You had no right to share them here."
They stopped being private the second you started using community property as collateral for your personal spending, I said. The sarcasm slipped out before I could stop it. Or did you think the board wouldn't notice when the rentals started showing up as security on loans none of us knew about? The chair asked to see the documents. While they reviewed them, my brother finally stood. His face was flushed.
Dad didn't do this alone, he said, voice low but carrying in the quiet room. I pushed for some of the transfers. I told him if we didn't cover my expenses quickly, the community would start asking questions about why the Golden Sun suddenly couldn't keep up. He was trying to protect the family name. I'm the one who said we could make it look like maintenance. I'm the one who told him Lauren would never understand because she's always been the one who stays on the outside. The confession landed like a stone in still water. My father turned to stare at him, genuine shock on his face for the first time. My mother made a small sound from the back row, like all the air had left her lungs at once. Catherine stood up abruptly. "This is a family matter. It shouldn't be aired in front of the entire board."
The chair ignored her. "The documentation shows clear irregularities. We'll be requesting a formal audit. Until then, all further transactions on the trust properties are frozen." I didn't stay for the rest. I walked out of the room with Sarah beside me and didn't look back. My phone was already buzzing with notifications from the community app. The story was spreading faster than any of them could control now.
By the time I got home, the comments had turned vicious in that polite neighborhood way. People who had smiled at me at the lagoon were suddenly posting about how unfortunate it was that some families couldn't handle their problems privately. Catherine had posted a long message about supporting longtime residents through difficult times and how important it was not to let one person's personal grievances damage the community's reputation.
I sat on my couch and read them until my eyes blurred. Then I started crying hard, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deeper than anger. I had spent years trying to be the daughter who didn't make waves, who asked questions quietly, who kept the peace. And in one meeting, I had burned every bridge they had built around me.
When the tears finally slowed, I wiped my face and opened my laptop. I drafted a short, factual post for the community app explaining that I had evidence of mismanagement and had followed the proper channels by bringing it to the board. I didn't name anyone. I didn't defend myself beyond the facts. Then I posted it. Within an hour, my father had called 6 times. My brother had sent one final text. "You just destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." I didn't answer either of them.
2 days later, I gave notice on my townhouse. The audit was moving forward. Patricia had filed the formal demand for accounting. The board had placed the trust properties under temporary oversight. My father's reputation in the community was in pieces. Catherine had stopped waving. My mother had sent one quiet text, "I'm sorry, I didn't speak up sooner." I hadn't replied yet.
I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollowed out and strangely light at the same time. The gated community that had felt like safety for 8 years now felt like a place where I would always be the difficult daughter who had made everything ugly. Staying would mean fighting every day to be believed. Leaving meant starting over without the safety net I had thought family was supposed to provide. I chose to leave.
On the morning I finished packing the last boxes into my car, I stood on the small balcony one last time and looked out at the lagoon. The water was still flat and glassy. Somewhere down the street, Catherine was probably already telling the new version of the story that I had overreacted, that families fight about money all the time, that some people just can't let things go. I didn't care anymore.
Blood had never meant loyalty in this family. It had meant silence and complicity and covering for the people who were supposed to protect you. I was done paying that price. I locked the door, dropped the keys in the management office, and drove out through the gate without looking back. The road ahead was uncertain, and I had less money than I should have because of what they had taken. But for the first time in years, the weight on my chest was gone.
I had chosen myself, and I felt no guilt for walking away from people who had only ever seen me as a resource to manage or a problem to silence. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your own peace, you know how heavy that decision can feel. Drop your thoughts below. What would you have done when the screenshots first showed up?